It is always great to catch up with Kyle Glaser from Baseball America. Super knowledgeable on all things baseball, but really good resource for Padres fans as well. And he's back with us right now on Jon and Jim. So, I mean, Kyle, the way we've looked at the offseason is, at best, not really ideal. It seems like if you compare them in 2024, heading into 2024, compared to where they were a year ago, it's hard to say on paper the Padres are anywhere near where they were a year ago on paper. So how do you summarize the Padres offseason to this point?
Well, look, there's been no secret they needed to cut payroll, get under $200 million, and they had to trade Juan Soto in order to do that. There's still a lot of holes on this team and not a ton of financial flexibility remaining, but there's still a little bit. So, look, this is just kind of where they are. This is never going to be an off season where they're going to be able to keep adding and adding and adding. They certainly have had to reshuffle some things to hit their payroll goals. But the offseason isn't over. We've got, almost 3 months till opening day still. Well, I guess with the series in Korea now, I guess it's more like 2.5 months. But there's no question that you look at this team that was an 82 win team a year ago, and you look at the roster today, and it's worse when you lose a Blake Snell, you lose a Josh Hader, you lose a Michael Walker and a Seth Lugo, and of course you lose a Juan Soto. There's certainly been more subtractions than additions thus far.
And there's a lot of holes still remaining on this roster. Where would you start as far as the area that they need the most help in? Like, is it the outfield when they have no outfielders? Is it pitching depth? Like, what area of need do they need to address before the start of the season the most?
It's the outfield. Right now, they have two spots that are not currently filled by guys who you want starting in the major leagues, and you could argue you probably don't want on a 26-man roster. The starting pitching, they at least have the bodies. It's a lot of young, unproven guys after Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove, and you certainly don't feel great about it. There's certainly going to be some drop-off, but you at least have the bodies. And the bullpen, again, you would like to see some more pitchers with some end-of-game experience in the major leagues, and especially potentially an established closer. But again, you have the bodies. They don't have the bodies in the outfield. They really, really, really need to go get two more starting outfielders. They also need to fill their DH spots. So really their remaining financial resources should be aimed at rounding out this lineup.
Kyle Glaser, Baseball America, with us right now on Jon and Jim. What did you think of the signings of both Matsui and Go from overseas?
Yeah, I mean, these are two pitchers who were among the best closers in their respective leagues. Matsui and NPB in Japan and Go in the KBO in Korea. And these are two guys who certainly should help the Padres bullpen in some form or fashion. Neither project to be closers in MLB like they were in their home countries. But look, Matsui's a lefty with a low 90s fastball that plays well, good splitter, good slider, can get guys out. They're both right-handed and left-handed at the plate. So, that's valuable. You look at, Go has a good fastball, 93, 95, up to 98. That plays, has flashed a good breaking ball, needs to work on its consistency. But, both these guys have pitches that should help in the Major League Baseball. There's some control issues. Again, they don't project to be closers, but a lot of games are lost in the 6th or 7th inning. And if those guys can fill out those innings and do a good job there, that'll be helpful.
Of these names, Kyle, Jackson Merrill, Robbie Snelling, Dylan Lesko, Jacob Marcy, Graham Pauley, and even Ethan Salas. Are any of them ready for the big leagues? And should any of them be up at the big league level at any time this season?
None of them will be ready by opening day. If they're on an opening day roster, it won't be a good thing. I think there's a chance, we could see one or two of them potentially ready after the All-Star break, sort of a call up around the trade deadline, depending on some roster needs there, what moves are made. Again, a lot of these guys got partial AA time, and Salas is kind of an odd exception there because he shouldn't have been there. But if all these guys open back up at AA and do well, move up to AAA and do well, I think it's reasonable that if they make the necessary strides in their development, we could see at least some of them later this season. But if any of these guys are up in April or May, that's not a good thing.
And why I asked that is because, I'm kind of wondering to myself, with all the needs they have and the amount of resources they have left to spend, which is not a lot, maybe they view their internal guys as filling those holes. And that's a pretty dangerous thing with an AJ Preller run organization because, I mean, let's face it, he hasn't developed really anybody through his system at all over the course of his tenure as the Padres GM.
I wouldn't quite say that. The Padres actually have a lot of guys they've drafted and developed well. They've just been traded for established big.
That's what I meant. Stayed with the club is what I mean.
Very few have reached their peaks wearing a Padres uniform. That's correct. And some of that is they were just traded before they had a chance to kind of hit their primes. But look, this is an organization that has a track record of rushing guys to their detriment. Doesn't help the player, doesn't help the team. So I think the best thing is to let these guys develop on their own timelines, bring them up when they're ready, and not try to force them into a major league role before they're ready. Again, that's not going to benefit the player. That's not going to benefit the team.
Kyle Glaser, Baseball America, with us on Jon and Jim. We kind of started the show by saying we talked about this Robbie Ray move, and I get it. Maybe it's not overly significant for 2024 because of Tommy John, but I do think he could play a role in the second half, and he could certainly play a role in 2025 and beyond with the Giants. But this idea of, are the Padres better than the Giants? Are they worse than the Giants? It's hard to say they're better than the Dodgers or the Diamondbacks based on the state of those organizations. So how do you stack up the Padres right now? Again, we know it's not a finished roster. Same thing with the Giants. How do you stack up those two teams?
Yeah, so again, before I start, I would caution to say these rosters could look very different on opening day. So this assessment could change a lot by opening day. But if you just look at it right now, again, the Padres are an 82-win team that has gotten worse and lost a lot of talent, a lot of the players I talked about earlier. The Giants were a 79-win team that has gotten better. They've added a Robbie Ray. They've added a Jung Lee. They've gotten better. So I think when you look at the Padres, they certainly have more top-end talent than the Giants. But, as we've talked about and as we've seen over and over and over again, it's not just about top-end talent. You have to be good 1 through 9 in the lineup, 1 through 5 in the rotation. The Giants are a more well-balanced team. Their 6 through 9 hitters are better than the Padres' 6 through 9 hitters right now. Their 3 through 5 starters are better than the Padres' 3 through 5 starters right now. So, top-end talent versus more balanced, I think I would lean toward balance. And you look at these teams, despite their big names and their payrolls and their narratives, they're only 3 wins apart last year. And it was a close call. The Giants have gotten better. The Padres have gotten worse.
How would you describe what the 2024 season, like the motivation or the goals or expectations for the 2024 team should be or will be?
Yeah, so again, some of this is going to depend on what moves this front office can make, how creative they can get in trades, and seeing what this roster looks like on opening day. But again, when you look at it right now, given the number of holes they have to fill, given the lack of payroll room to do so, and given where a lot of their best prospects are in their development, I do kind of see 2024 as a transition year where, you let these guys develop at their own pace in the minor leagues. You let the veterans do their thing in the majors. And then in 2025, when these prospects have gotten more playing time, gotten more experience, maybe gotten their first taste in the majors, and they're ready to be established in 2025, you combine that with this great core of Tatis and Machado and Bogarts and Musgrove and Darvish, then you might have a complete team capable of competing. But I do think 2024, as the roster stands right now, would be more of a transition year.
It's interesting. I mean, that's the way we felt about it. We spent so much time talking about it. But again, they drew $3.2 million and they spent all this money this past year. I guess my question is this: does AJ Preller, quote unquote, survive a transition year that would be out of the postseason in 3 of 4 years? Like, is he going to get 2025 even with upside in 2025 if he doesn't make the postseason in 2024?
And that's a question only Padres ownership can answer. I think some of that's going to come down to setting expectations with ownership and the fan base. I think that, look, you do have to look at the track record. AJ Preller has had 9 full seasons as a GM, and they have not had a 90-win season. They're now going to be on their 6th full-time managerial hire under AJ Preller in 10 seasons, which, again, is certainly more than a lot of teams or general managers get. Look, you're going to have to assess it. Again, a lot's going to come down to what they do here in these next few months before opening day and the expectations that the front office sets to the fan base and ownership.
And before we let you go here, Kyle, I just want to dive deeper into one player that I mentioned earlier, and that's Jackson Merrill, because I feel like he's the one name that Padres fans talk about the most, and probably potential of him being at the big league level first over all those guys. But when you look at a guy like Jackson Merrill, how would you, where would you say that his best fit is on the field, and what type of hitter could he project to be?
Yeah, so he's a very, very mature player for his age. He has really good at bats, hangs it well against lefties. It's more contact over power, but it's hard contact. You have to remember he's 20 years old. He comes from a cold weather state in Maryland. This is not a finished product by any means. He's continuing to develop physically. He won't turn 21 until April of next year. So I think right now it's more contact over power, but he should grow into power as he matures. Defensively, it's more polish over, super twitchiness. I think he can play a solid shortstop. Depending who you talk to, others think he might end up better as a third baseman, just with, not having the most electric range in the world. And if he gets bigger and slows down a tick, but he should stay on the left side of the infield and be an impact hitter. The issue, of course, is you have Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado locked in there. So finding position on the field for him is something that's on the to-do list. But right now, the main focus is just be letting him get at bats in Double A and Triple A. Again, he's had less than 50 games above the Class A levels. He needs more development time, and also some of it's just age and physical development. Again, he's 20 years old. He's not a finished product.
So if he were to play the outfield this year for the Padres, that'd be a bad idea?
If the Padres move him to the outfield, he needs to spend a full season in the minor leagues learning to play it. Again, a new position on top of trying to adjust and adapt to hitting major league pitching. You're just making it a more difficult transition. Learning to play any position at a major league caliber level takes thousands of reps, and he would need a full season in the minor leagues if they want to do that.
Kyle, one more before you go. Would you expect, and we don't know the full status, I guess, of Manny Machado coming off injury, but would your expectation be Machado would start the year at DH and Ha-Seong Kim, assuming they hold on to him, would start the year at third base?
Some of that's just going to depend on Machado's timeline and how well he healed. I hate to speculate on injury timelines because every player healed differently.
Sure.
So I'm going to hold off on making any declarative statements there until we know a little more about where he is in the rehab process.
Kyle, always appreciate it. Great insight. Spring training is coming next month. The Padres, like you said, will be in action March 20th at 3 a.m. in Korea against the Dodgers. The season will be here before we know it. And Kyle, we always appreciate your time. Thanks for doing it today.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime, guys.
All right. Kyle Glaser from Baseball America. His words, transition year.
Transition year.
Which, again, have been, I get pushback. And when I'm like, I look at the moves and the actions and they're rebuilding. And we're like, no, they're not rebuilding. And I don't think they're rebuilding, but I don't know what word I would use. Maybe he used the right word, transition.
Yeah. I feel like the last couple of days we've been trying to figure out a word to use. I used developmental.
Right.
And
I
then
think you said that he used that with Jeff Sanders.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast and I mentioned developmental year. But transition year as well.